Good morning. Happy Tuesday. I watched a video yesterday, Juan Galt posted, of the Georgia Supreme Court questioning the state's attorney about the use of citations in an order and apparently in the motion requesting the order or opposition to a motion and the proposed order based on the opposition to a motion, where there are apparently like 5 citations to cases that don't exist, and at least another 5 cases that were either cited for a proposition that they don't contain and or misquoted, like quotations from the cases that don't exist in the actual cases. The working theory, obviously, is that this is the work of AI, that AI was used to generate the papers that were submitted to the court, and that AI hallucinated. And let me tell you from my experience, having dealt with multiple people who, in a pro per capacity or questioning my abilities as an attorney and preparing legal pleadings for me that show exactly what they want and exactly how they want it cited, blah, 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 where they've used AI, I can tell you that AI, at least in the law, is a nightmare. It's a freaking nightmare. You get a citation. First of all, you have to find the cited case. Second, you have to read the cited case to make sure that it says what it has to say. And there is a non-zero probability that either the case doesn't exist or that it doesn't say what the proposition it's being held out for. Honestly, like when so Google has that little AI function in it, where if you put in a search inquiry, it'll return an AI generated nonsense. And oftentimes that is a good starting point for research, because 9 times out of 10, maybe even 10 times out of 10, it'll return like attorneys, like a lot of attorneys have web pages that deal with kind of commonly asked questions in their particular practice field. And sometimes those attorneys' pages will have like citations to actual relevant cases on them, etc. So it's a good starting point for research. I have yet to see it be a good endpoint for motions. I have a pro per opponent in a current case where he just floods me with AI generated motions and oppositions and memoranda, etc. And it is unbelievable the amount of time it takes to go through and correct it. I got a communication from the California State Bar. They sent it to all the licensed attorneys, I think it was last week, talking about the dangers of AI. This is a real problem. Everybody thinks that, well, a lot of the normies, a lot of the boomers, and a lot of the young kids think that AI is some miracle cure. It's amazing, right? But it is deeply, deeply flawed. I'm not a programmer. I see the results, and the results are less than spectacular. My godfather is a teacher, and we have a men's get together once a month with various other of his godchildren and friends and things like that, where not only is my godfather a teacher, but there's at least one other teacher in that group. And they've been commenting to me when we've kind of discussed this issue just in friendly conversation, that it is a real problem in school. Kids are using AI to summarize lectures and things like that. They're using AI to prepare homework assignments. And their big complaint is they're not allowed to fail these kids. They have to give them a pass, even if it's absolutely AI and absolutely wrong. They still have to pass them. And so the kids aren't understanding that AI is deeply flawed, and it does not give you back necessarily a correct response. I mean, it might. It also might not. So anyway, I would hazard a guess that state's attorney is running very quickly into being disciplined by the Georgia Supreme Court, who most likely controls discipline for attorneys. Generally speaking, the state Supreme Court in a given state has the ultimate disciplinary authority over the attorneys that practice law in that state. Generally speaking, I mean, there might be exceptional cases. Some states might use a different board or whatever. But that's my understanding, having looked into these issues in various states. And the reason why is that attorney used AI and didn't double check the AI. I mean, if you really want to, you can generate a pleading based on AI, and as long as you go through it, you make sure that all the citations are good and all the propositions the cases are being cited for are the actual propositions the case holds, because a lot of people don't understand what dicta is. Yes, I just said dicta. Dicta is language in a case that is not relevant to the underlying issue being addressed in the case. Dicta is fairly common. 90+% of sovereign citizen arguments are based on dicta. They'll cherry pick a sentence out of a case that doesn't deal with the issue in that sentence, and they'll hold that forth as though it has some magical power, when you actually go and read the case, and the case isn't dealing with the issue that they're using that citation for, and they don't understand it. But the case said this. Well, sure, the case does say that, but it is what is called dicta. There's a legal term for it. That legal term has meaning, and it exists for a reason, and the reason that it exists is because you can't cite a case for a proposition it doesn't hold. You can't cite a case dealing with X for the purpose of Y. So, AI is real. It's a problem. Back when I made this comment previously on a video dealing with the guy's Rossman, who apparently the bulk of his followers are big believers in technology and big believers in AI. And they all said, oh, you're wrong. I could use Claude AI to go through all the statutes and court rules in minutes, and it would take you hours, and I'd be just as right as you were. And I'm going to guess that is an absolutely inaccurate statement, because these AIs don't just pull from a specific group of documents, and they don't always understand them, because, as the sovereign citizens like to say, a lot of law is written in legalese. The words that are used have very specific, definite meanings. And, lawyers make mistakes all the time. I had a guy telling me that, they'd be estopped from doing this. And I'm like, wait a minute. Are you sure they'd be estopped? I mean, estopped, like estoppel. Estoppel means that they held one position on one pleading, and then now they're trying to hold a different contradictory opinion. That would be a case of estoppel. They would be estopped from holding that second contradictory opinion. Oh, yeah, that's right. Forum nonconveniens doesn't mean inconvenient forum. It has a specific legal meaning. Extraordinary writ doesn't mean, a writ for possession or a writ for, well, I mean, it has specific meanings, like a writ of mandamus is an extraordinary writ. A writ of habeas corpus is an extraordinary writ. A writ of certiorari is an extraordinary writ. These are a writ of possession is for, basically pending trial, getting custody of personal property. It's not an extraordinary writ because you're doing it at the trial court. A writ of mandamus is a petition to an appellate court saying that, require the court below you, the trial court, to do X, Y, or Z. That's an extraordinary writ. You're going outside of the ordinary trial court stuff. It's just, lawyers misuse them way more often than I would hope. And AIs also misuse them. So that's boring, and I understand. I did get a comment from a commenter saying, how can you say the U.S. is losing? Well, I could say the U.S. is losing because the only stated goal that seems to have any emphasis behind it, judging by what the U.S. has done, is regime change. And both U.S. analysts and Israeli analysts have allegedly, I haven't read the briefings, I've only read reports on them, have allegedly been saying that the Iranian government, the regime that we're trying to change, has a firm grip on the society of Iran, and they're not in any danger of a popular uprising, at least at this point. On the other hand, Iran has a stated goal and a tactic, strategy, whatever you want to call it, of causing economic turmoil as a weapon to fight against the U.S. And they're achieving that. They have effectively blocked the Straits of Hormuz, where a large part of the world's oil and natural gas transit. And the U.S. doesn't have a way of undoing that. Oh, but they've killed a bunch of Iranian leaders and the rest are in hiding. Well, yeah, because those guys don't want to get killed either. However, the regime is still in charge, and the regime still has the same posture towards the U.S. that they did when we started. They might have even hardened a bit, which is counterproductive. I'm not an Iran fanboy. I have zero fucks given about Iran. I'm not trying to blow smoke up their skirt. However, they had a plan. That plan has been implemented for decades, and they are executing that plan successfully. And we don't have a counter to it. Whereas our assassination attempts to incite regime change have produced no results. We assassinated a Khomeini who was willing to talk to the U.S., who had issued a fatwa against nuclear weapons. We've replaced him with a Khomeini, the son of the original Khomeini, who is more hardline, according to the reports I've read, than his father, who might issue a different fatwa saying that nuclear weapons are okay. We killed the second Khomeini's immediate family, or at least a lot of them. His daughter, we know, is dead. His wife is dead. His brother is dead. His dad is dead on that initial strike on the original Elder Khomeini. I am just going to guess. I am going to place myself in his shoes. And he was injured in that attack. I'm going to place myself in his shoes, and I'm going to guess he wants to give a big ol' F-you to the U.S. I don't think he likes us very much. We killed his family. We hurt him. If I was him, I would not like the U.S. at all. I would be unwilling to give the U.S. quarter at all. I would do everything in my power to make life as miserable for the U.S. as I possibly could. He alleges that we've destroyed a lot of their missile stockpile and their launchers. Well, have we? Initial reports were that Iran had somewhere between 1,000 and 2,500 missiles in their stockpile at the start of the war. How do we know that? We don't. They were firing missiles that were apparently made in the 60s at us at the beginning, probably to saturate our air defenses and to reduce our ability later on to intercept their more advanced, more recent missiles. I'm not even sure that they're firing missiles made in the 2000s yet. I mean, maybe they are. But the initial reports, when they were looking at it, these were missiles that were made in the 60s. So they have 60 years of missiles that they've been producing. Have we at all lessened their ability to produce missiles? You don't know that, and I don't know that. Where are their missile production facilities? You don't know. I don't know. Why are we striking police stations, parks, schools, hospitals, energy infrastructure, like oil producing and gas producing infrastructure? I don't know that we've struck their electrical systems yet. But why are we striking those targets? Probably because we don't have any other targets to strike. I am understanding, I have no firsthand knowledge of this, that they have what are called missile cities. They're built about 500 meters below the rock, below the ground. Massive complexes. Apparently, allegedly, every province has one. Allegedly. I don't know. This is just what I'm told. Giant bases underground that they've been working on for probably since the 80s, when the Ayatollah took power, because they've had this strategy for a long time. They can't compete with us by building aircraft carriers, but missiles are cheap. They're the preferred weapon. Missiles and drones, preferred weapon for cheap, ranged attacks. You don't need to fly a plane to launch them. And planes are expensive and easy targets. So you make missiles and you put them in underground bases, 500 meters below the surface, where our standard bunker busting bomb will go about 40, 50 meters through concrete. These are below rock. I think that's harder than concrete. I'm not an expert, but it's well shy of the 500 meters that these missile bases are allegedly underground. Well shy. We dropped MOABs, the biggest non-nuclear bombs that the U.S. has, the most powerful non-nuclear bombs the U.S. has, on the nuclear facilities. I forget the names of them. Doesn't really matter. And we were able to damage the entrances. Now, allegedly we damaged the entrances, and I bet we did the entrances that we knew about. But apparently these underground missile cities are like rat warrens. They have secondary, tertiary exits and entrances. We've dropped bunker buster bombs on the entrances that we know of to these places. But who knows how much food and all the other stuff that they need to operate is stored down there, and who knows how many other entrances and exits they have. We don't. Iran is getting supplies from Russia. There was a giant convoy of supplies, allegedly humanitarian stuff like food and things like that. Who's to say they're not getting drones and missiles from Russia? Who's to say they're not getting drones and missiles and the parts to make them from China? We don't know how many missiles they have. We don't know if they're still capable of producing missiles. Ukraine, less than half the size of Iran, without having giant missile bases 500 meters underground, is still able to produce missiles and drones. I mean, the Flamingo missile, allegedly they're producing them in Ukraine, probably from parts shipped in from various Western countries, but they're producing them, for plausible deniability. They're assembling them anyway in Ukraine. And again, they don't have the landmass of Iran. They don't have the mountains of Iran. They don't have giant underground missile cities. Like, we're losing. It's not with great joy that I say this. I just want to be clear. I'm pro-America, but this was an absurd war that Trump had no plans for. When John Bolton, neocon extraordinaire, who desperately wanted to attack Iran, when he's saying that Trump screwed up because he didn't have a plan for Hormuz, and that when Bolton was the, I forget what he was in the Trump administration, I forget his actual position, but when he was lobbying Trump to attack Iran back when he was in the Trump administration, he was saying that we need to have something in place to deal with the Strait of Hormuz. And God help us if they mine it. If they mine the Strait of Hormuz, it's done. The U.S. apparently doesn't have the capability of clearing. We have huge issues with clearing it. Apparently Germany, who has refused to join in this misguided war, does have mine clearing equipment that is sufficient to clear the Straits of Hormuz, assuming that they can operate there without being targeted by missiles and drones and attack boats that, part of the Navy that Trump allegedly destroyed that still exists and still goes out and attacks tankers, because they've got underground naval bases, bro. They've been planning for this. They had a strategy. They worked towards being able to achieve that strategy, and now they're implementing that strategy. That's how I can say we're losing. Our allies aren't coming in to save us. Trump called for NATO to send a fleet to unblock the Strait of Hormuz, and NATO said, no. Keir Starmer wanted to join, but the public in Britain is apparently rabidly against it. So the best he could do is send. I think he sent a destroyer out to Crete to intercept incoming missiles to Crete, intercept missiles and drones going to Crete. I mean, allegedly France is sending an aircraft carrier. Don't worry, they have plenty of white flags stowed on it because, France loves to surrender. But they're not going to unblock the Strait of Hormuz with their carrier. I mean, if the U.S., the largest, at least by tonnage, Navy in the world, allegedly the most advanced Navy in the world, with unlimited money printing behind it, isn't confident that it can unblock the Strait of Hormuz, what is a French carrier going to do? They're not going to do anything. They're not going to go in there. They just get blown up. So we are losing because we are unable to achieve our stated war goal, at least the only one that makes sense. It went from we've already destroyed their ability to make nukes to, maybe we're going to do that. We can't do that. We're going to stop their ability to make ballistic missiles. We can't do that. We're going to do regime change. I mean, it's theoretically possible still, but there's no evidence that we are accomplishing that. The only evidence that I have seen is that we're hardening the Iranian people against the U.S. I've read interviews of Iranian people who were dissidents prior to this war who said, we didn't expect them to bomb our infrastructure. We thought they were going to come in and free us, but instead they're blowing up hospitals, they're blowing up schools. They're blowing up homes. They're blowing up police stations. They're blowing up everything that people need to live. So F these guys. This is an existential threat for Iran. This is, for Trump's estimation, an excursion, an outing. He calls it an operation. He doesn't even call it a war. He doesn't think, I think it's very existential to his presidency. I think if this goes tits up, I mean, I would assume at this point that the Democrats are going to take the House in the midterms. I would assume that. Depending on how they do in the Senate, which, maybe, they might impeach him. I could see them impeaching him. I could definitely see them pulling the, what do they call that? The War Powers Act, that is giving him license to attack Iran until Congress says, no, you can't do it anymore. Talk about a constitution that just isn't working anymore. I mean, Congress was supposed to have the power to say if, when, and how we go to war. And they gave up that power. They handed it to the president, which was just retarded. And now the president can essentially unilaterally engage us, embroil us in a war that the American public doesn't want. Talk about a constitution that is no longer fit for purpose. Anyway. Oh, yeah. And then the most retarded commenter that I currently have, who I have zero respect for, obviously, said, well, John, when I was saying you need to learn to speak Chinese, what I was actually saying was that China wants to basically take over our role as the preeminent superpower. Yeah, they do. Sure. Absolutely. Why wouldn't they? China has always seen themselves as the center of the world, the great empire, obviously. But China has a different strategy than the U.S. does. China's strategy is to form trading partnerships. They want to economically dominate the globe. They want to produce everything and have the rest of the world buy it so that all the money flows in, all the capital flows into China. And they get to have their little empire. Whereas the U.S. goes around blowing up brown people, invading third world countries, overthrowing by force regimes. I honestly don't think that I need to learn to speak Chinese. They're already our biggest trading partner. We already get a massive amount of our goods from China. What would change? Nothing. We just wouldn't be blowing up brown people anymore. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.